Our greatest journey is not conquering the mountains, the sea, or space. It has become fully alive, to have faced adversity and mowed it down, to have stood still in the face of our monsters and watched as they vanished into the ether. It's this journey that calls to the hero within every single one of us, heroes like Jaime Stables. Stables is one of the most beloved, beautiful, and best poker content producers on Twitch, a fact recognized by his 140,000 fans and his relationship with both PokerStars and Party Poker. How did it go from one table in $3 rebuys while smoking cigars in his mother's living room to amassing a tribe that draws the attention of the biggest online poker rooms in the world? Let's find out. Ladies and gentlemen, Jaime Stables. Jaime Stables, welcome to the Hero's Journey by Run It Once. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Lee. Thanks for having me on, man.
It's a pleasure, man. Pleasure. Normally in these interviews, the modus operandi is to warm people up, to ask them some kind of like icebreaking questions to get them into the groove. Not on this show, man. We're not going to do none of that shit. Come on. Let's go straight with the hardcore questions, shall we?
Okay, I'm in.
What 5 ways are you really difficult to live with?
I'm a perfectionist, I would say, but not everywhere. So perfectionist is 1. 2 is I kind of go down a rabbit hole. I get obsessive about things. So, for example, picking up my socks is not something that goes across my head fairly often, I would say. 3, I'm a bit of a workaholic. So my mind is constantly thinking about my career when I'm done working, and that's, I think, annoying. 4, I sleep at weird times because poker in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
There's only 4.
We'll find a 5th as we go on. One of the ones you said there was perfectionism.
Mm.
And in the great work of Brené Brown, she actually refers to perfectionism as one of the main armors against vulnerability. So if we're always striving for perfection, then we are less likely to just kind of like openly admit that we're just, fucked up screw ups, right? And we can't get our shit together, etc., etc. Do you kind of jive with that? Does that land anywhere? How are you when it comes to vulnerability, and how does that tie in with perfectionism?
Definitely resonates. Yeah, I think I've recently discovered this aspect of myself, which I wasn't really aware. But I realized there's all sorts of things that I wasn't doing, I wasn't starting, I wasn't approaching or thinking about because I couldn't do it perfectly. So I just wouldn't do it. And I think that has caused me like a lot of difficulty in various aspects of my life and career. So I think it is that protection, and I see that in myself of all the way or not trying at all. And maybe vulnerability is the balance, like you say. So
what you're saying is, there's something or an endeavor that you want to get into, or there's something you want to try, but you don't want to fail at it, so you won't try at it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Is that how much of that is like for yourself internally, and how much is that externally? Because I know you've grown up in this social media, Twitch kind of like reality TV kind of world. So how much is internal? How much is external when it comes to, trying to run away a little bit from that vulnerability?
I think there's no question the external plays a factor. Because my career as a poker ambassador and a poker pro has really been built around the idea of like having attention on what I'm doing, right? And it was something that I really chased because it was my opportunity to get somewhere and to do something. So when things aren't particularly going well, it's difficult because you get a lot of backlash. I get a lot of backlash. So yeah, I struggle with the balance of that. Like, where do I draw the line between who I am as a person and who I am publicly? Because sometimes the public nature does stop me from doing some of the things I should be doing or I want to do, because I'm afraid of backlash or the reaction or how people respond. Um, so I would say that's definitely a factor, but it's internal as well, which is like this built up image of who I want to be. And if it's not all the way, it kind of conflicts with that image, which I'm always working to get better at and be more accepting of like not being perfect and doing things less than perfect, and that's okay, and a worthwhile pursuit. So it is both.
How much of that is the externalization of it? How much is that the fact that you're, I mean, employed might be the wrong word, but you're in a contract with Party Poker. So how much is that I need to behave in a certain way because I'm representing Party Poker? Similarly, I need to behave a certain way because Run It Once Poker are sponsoring this podcast, I guess, although I don't tend to do that. But I guess, how much is that relationship, or is it just you have this thing with yourself that I don't want to like give the whole thing there because I'm worried how the public will react, and then if they kind of like switch me off or they don't follow me anymore, then what I'm doing kind of like falls apart. Where's the balance there?
Yeah, so I think I don't particularly feel pressure from Party Poker or past, relationships with like PokerStars or what have you. I don't feel pressure from them to be a certain person. I think the pressure comes more from, I don't know, a little bit of my upbringing and like playing golf as a kid. It was always a game built around respect, and that was like something. Respect and tradition. You shake your opponent's hand at the end of the game, and those were the people that were really the heroes of that industry. That was a long part of my life before poker. So I have this pressure to have that same persona in poker and to be an upstanding person, and I think legacy at the end of the day, be remembered for being I don't know, like kind and successful and not spreading rumors and that sort of stuff. So I think that is more the pressure that I put on myself, the legacy, as opposed to, a sponsorship or a relationship that way. What was the second part of your thing?
I'll give you an example. So have you seen Athlete A on Netflix?
Athlete A? I don't think so.
So it's a documentary about childhood sexual abuse that went on throughout the USA gymnastics. It's nasty. There was this doctor that was working at all the Olympics with all these the female USA gymnastics, and he was sexually abusing them. Over 500 girls came forward, right? So, as you know, I help people quit alcohol, right? And I have a community of people much similar like you have with Twitch. And I watched this documentary. I have a 4-year-old daughter, a 19-year-old boy. And as I was summing up my thoughts and feelings to my community about how I felt about Athlete A and what we can learn from it, there was a sticky part of it where I said to myself, hang on a minute, there's a trend here, a very nasty trend, that men throughout history abuse women and females and children and girls. And that can't just be like a few psychopaths or a few pedophiles, right? It just happens all the time. So what is it within man that is enabling them to do that, right? So as I'm exploring this, I'm a man. So as I'm exploring this and I'm talking about it to my tribe, I realize that I'm on kind of like a rickety bridge here, because I'm actually saying, I feel like there's a dark shadow inside a man that we try really hard through rules and societal conditioning and morals and ethics to block it, to not allow it to happen, almost like the animal part of us. Right. And I have to accept, if I'm going to lay that blame at the foot of all men, and I'm talking about the species, then I have to accept that I'm part of that, and there's a dark side of that in me. And there's a part of me that before I press the enter key, was like, oh, how many people are going to leave my tribe right now because I'm airing something, a thought around, or a hypotheses of how I think, and how many people are going to have an issue with how I think. It's a little bit like Black Lives Matter right now, isn't it? I guess, like, how willing are we to talk about these things, and how confident are we on being vulnerable in ourselves versus I gotta watch that a little bit because I don't want to lose my business. Is that land more?
Yes. Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. And I think in that regard, I'm particularly selfish in that I break it down in my head in terms of how I feel and what I say, and then how they hear what I say and how they decode that, right? So I think about it particularly analytically. Anything that I put out, any conversation that I have, uh, a sentence, this conversation, a tweet, like all of it to me is the important part is what they hear, not what I say, because what they hear is not actually based around the words. It's the context of their life. It's the context of the platform, the conversation, etc. So for me, I definitely do not run my life in an unfiltered way because I'm always considering the audience, even in my personal relationships. And the reason is not because of my sponsorship. It's just because I think that's the best way to make an impact in the world, to even to develop relationships. I think the same sentence is going to be heard differently from two different people. So I do feel that pressure, but I think it's a conscious one. And I don't have the desire yet to just, well, this is how I am, and I'll just leave it to you guys to love it or hate it. Like I'm always on the other side, I think, of how are they going to think about it?
Is that, and we'll touch about you growing up in a bit, but is this part of like the continual evolution of Jamie Staples' personality, that you've reached that point right now, and the fact that you're a Twitch streamer, a very prominent Twitch streamer, is irrelevant? This is just who you are and how you be behaving anyway. And how much of it is kind of like, I don't know, somewhere along the line, I don't even think these things exist, but you go on a Twitch streaming course or something, and it's like, right, it's really important, that your audience like gets to make their own mind up about these things, and you don't be like completely unfiltered. Like, is it you, or have you always been thinking about, not always, but you've been thinking about this more since you've been streaming?
I think it must have had an impact. Like it's tough to be objective, I think. But when, the last 5 years has been based around that practice of like talking to a lot of people and trying to shape a message as opposed to like one-on-one interactions, and the incentives in that regard, I think it has to play a fact. And I'm not convinced that it's the right way, but it's definitely the way that I am. And I think it's creates the most plus EV sort of outcomes in personal relationships and in like being persuasive or getting what you want, or all of those things, for better or worse. I do think it helps to think that way.
And it's working for you.
I guess so. Yeah.
Yeah. It's working. I mean, when you look at I said about the alcohol industry just now, or the sobriety industry. We're talking about the poker industry here. And there's no running away from it. The poker community can be pretty. We have our trolls. So if we are willing to be unfiltered, we've also got to be willing to absorb all the negative energy that could come our way. And I imagine if we're streaming live, that can be a really, really difficult thing to handle if it's coming at you. Like if you've said something and given your opinion on something, it's like literally setting a bonfire on light. That could be very difficult.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's, I think there's more negativity in our industry than in the average, even like in gaming and stuff. I think poker is perhaps on the negative side. And, yeah, like you say, there's a lot of pain out there. There's a lot of people that play poker and gamble, really responsibly, and it's a beneficial thing, and they benefit. But I think there's a portion that use it to escape not particularly great situations, whether that's internal or external, or try and escape through this game. And I think there's just pain there. There's just pain, and the poker industry bears it. So.
Yeah, there's definitely this, because of the luck element in the game, there's definitely this Schadenfreude thing where people are really like feeling some kind of enjoyment out of other people's like screw ups, like, yes, I'm so glad that guy's finally lost. Like, it's like, it just seems ever since I joined, like it's been symptomatic. And I've I probably like felt like that myself on occasion, you know. So where did you grow up then, Jamie? Tell us a little bit about where you grew up and what the mood was like back then and how that shaped you as a kid.
So I was born in Lethbridge, Alberta, Canada, which is a prairie town of 70 or 80,000. Oldest of four siblings. One of them, my brother Matt, streams on Twitch as well. My other brother Chris lives with me. And my parents were both music teachers, actually. My dad, a prof at the University of Lethbridge, and then my mom, a high school teacher in music. So it was, to me, it was a very normal upbringing. You know, it's just like, this is what life is. In hindsight, it was just like a very nice, happy, peaceful experience. You know, like we lived in a house. We all had our own bedrooms. We went to school, and we had like a cabin to take vacations to, and drove normal cars and wore normal clothes. Like life was just fine. You know, it wasn't special, but it was, everyone was happy and we liked each other. I think what was interesting looking back is everyone kind of had projects that they worked on. Like I wanted to become Tiger Woods. And so I had that passion and obsession, and I really dove into that, right? And like went for it. And my sister, she danced. So she would have dance classes like 6 days a week. And then she would also, you know, like act in the play. And my brothers would play like badminton. So we all had these different things, like my parents included, that we worked on almost as like our passions, you know? It was almost like I had a career in my mind at 12, and no one gave it to me. I just gave it to myself. Like I'm a golfer. And we all had that, but then we'd come back, and this was like the communal meeting place of like all these people that had their things they were working towards. So I think it was a really interesting in hindsight how that worked out, like how different everything was. Everyone was doing different stuff, you know? But I look back really fondly because, you know, my parents were just loving and supportive and there to help me whenever they could. And same with my siblings as well. Like we didn't really fight too much after maybe 16. Before that,
16 years of wrath.
Yeah.
What was it like? Was there any particular challenges being the eldest?
I think just maybe a bit of pressure, right? Like pressure to provide an example for my siblings and to do well. And, you know, the first child, a lot of expectation, I think, on parents that want to bring someone up that is successful. I've got a big family of cousins as well on both sides. So I think there's always like, whether you like it or not, there's some level of comparison there between yourself and like other cousins and stuff. So I think I felt a little bit of that. Yeah.
Well, I mean, with your parents being teachers, was that an issue, kind of like with academic pressure?
Not too much. I think there was more pressure on music, actually.
Right.
Because I took piano classes, and we would fight so much about practicing piano. Like, it was just terrible. And that was like when I was maybe 8 to 12 or 13 that I did piano. Because I didn't really want to do it, but you know, they're both musicians, and they're like, you know, try and like you'll appreciate this when you're older, which I do. But at the time, it was really kind of a battle of like, I don't want to be doing this, and just do it. So yeah, that was, I guess, a bit of an experience, and where I felt the pressure. Not really academically. My grades were. I was more of a golfer than a student, you know, like I'd get the equivalent of like 70s, I think, and just like not really study or do homework and floated by. And they didn't like that, but they accepted it, you know.
Well, yesterday I asked my daughter what she wanted for tea. She's like I said earlier on, she's 3.5, and she said she wanted potato soup. So I'm like, okay. So I go to market, I bust out the russet potatoes, you know, and I start cutting them, you know, peeling them with a knife. And my mother-in-law is like, what are you using a knife for? Like, use a potato peeler. Well, my mom taught me how to peel a potato with a knife when I was like 8 or 9. Like I had to cook dinner for everybody while I went to the pub.
Wow.
Is there something you remember, something specific that you remember that your parents taught you, or an area of your life where you think they lapsed a bit? That you wish you were taught but you didn't get taught? And that could be practically, it could be psychologically.
So I think to focus on the positive first, something that really stuck with me is I was getting bullied a little bit in grade 6, 7, 8. There was just a dynamic where there's like a fairly predominant religion in my hometown. And I was not part of that religion. And that's not a problem. We didn't argue about religion or anything, right? But there was kind of a clique, and I was not in the clique. So I always felt pressure of like not being the in kid in this clique of people that took part in this religion. So I got bullied a little bit for being on the outside and like being kind of bratty and loud and annoying. And so I struggled with it a bit. I'd cry and like I never got beat up, but it was traumatic at the time. And my parents explained to me a way to sort of flip that mindset on its head and take control back and feel like better about myself and have more self-esteem, was that the bullying was sort of the weakness. The being mean to people and pointing out their weaknesses or flaws or making them feel bad about themselves is in fact the shameful act and the weak act, and the strength is the ability to take that and still be kind and not have to give it back. So that like really resonated with me, and I take that forward today into the poker world and like my stream and the way I try and act professionally and try and not fling too much shit around unless it's all in good fun. Yeah. I think they taught me that at 12 or 13. It just really stuck with me, and it changed, I think, the way I think about relationships. I like and that. I guess like a negative would probably revolve around that pressure, I'd say. I think there was some pressure when it came to piano lessons, and I've had counseling and therapy since and talked about aspects of my life and sort of explored them and tried to figure out how they affected my brain. And I think that probably put a lot of pressure on me to perform, in my life. Like the two parents that were music teachers, and so they're professionals, and like I'm a young kid, and I have to, like I feel that responsibility to do well for them. I think that created a lot of drive, and it's benefited me, but also not necessarily happiness has been benefited from that. I think stress on myself, pressure on myself probably comes from that aspect, I would say.
It's funny because you said right at the beginning, like the 4 reasons that you're difficult to live with. Like one of them was perfectionism, the other one was workaholic, and they both really tie in, don't they, to that kind of early kind of pressure that you felt to do these things that you probably didn't want to do, and like you probably wouldn't have minded being like an excellent piano player, but you got to go through all that practice, and then if you don't have the passion, so how would you, because you mentioned there that like it is a paradox, right? Because without that drive and without that perfectionism, without that workaholic streak, you likely wouldn't be where you are today. But at the same time, you've got to balance that with the stress and the pressure and the anxiety that kind of like that builds as a result of that. How would you teach your kids in a similar type of vein? Would you be like, you couldn't be like completely lax, you couldn't be like pushing too much? Have you ever thought about
that? Yeah, I have. And I think I don't have the answer, and it kind of freaks me out, to be honest, because looking at the outliers that we worship and idolize in every industry, the situation is usually not healthy in that regard. When we're worshiping like the most extreme poker players that put in insane amounts of hours, or celebrities that appear in 200 movies. Like usually there's something underlying that isn't happiness, and there's not necessarily even fulfillment in those outliers that we aspire to be. So do you pass along the idea to strive to be amazing for legacy, but in effect have no selfishness and like not care about how you feel when you live your life? Or do you do it the other way, where you're completely selfish and yet you lose any lasting sort of tangible legacy value that you could create by aspiring to do something big? I don't like, it's terrifying to me, the question, because it's like, it doesn't seem like you can win. They're both not right.
How much do you think money is tied up with that? Like I interviewed David Benefield on the I Am High Stakes Poker series, and there was a little snippet that the lads did and put on YouTube recently, where David was talking about everything was about money until it wasn't about money, but to get that money allowed so much of that stress and anxiety to kind of dissipate, because now you can just take your time and pick and choose your spots in life. Like because I often think to myself, okay, so what I'll do is I'll just put my foot on the gas and I'll work really hard and be a workaholic. And then when I'm a success and I've got all the money, then I'll be able to take my foot off the gas and give everything to my family, by which time I'm 89 and I'm about to die, right? So how much does money come into you when you think about those things?
Yeah, I think it does for sure. Like, I think it's a factor, and I think I love your work, by the way, in those interviews. Like, I meant to message you because I do a 30-minute podcast called Weekly Poker Showdown, and I've never interviewed anyone before. So I'm kind of just like, Party Poker was like, hey, do you want to do this podcast? I was like, okay. And I'm figuring it out. But then I watch your podcast. They're so amazing and insightful, because you just get stories out of people that you don't hear anywhere. So anyways, thank you for your work on that. I'm really enjoying them.
Thank you for your love.
So for me, I think what I desire, like my benchmark for money right now is like, I would like enough disposable income coming in from, like, let's say the stock market, to where I could read books and write and eat and live and be fine. That's like my comfort threshold. Like, okay, like I can sack all this off and I'm fine. Yeah, like I can live my life. That's where I want to get to. But that line has changed. And I'm guessing that it'll keep changing, like I'm guessing the line will just get further and further. But I'm definitely chasing comfort, I think, financially. And I'm curious how many people also feel that. I don't know if you feel that. Just like a cushion of freedom. Like, I want to take 3 years off. I can do that. Or like, I can take 1 year off. Or I could take 10 years off, or I could retire, like that's kind of the success, not the ability to get a Ferrari or a Gucci bag.
I think there's a few things that's happened for me. One is like there's the whole like having enough money so you don't have to work thing. All right. So obviously I'm nowhere near there, but there's the other aspect of it, the psychological aspect of it, which I thought the other day is that I've worried about money my entire life up until this point right now, right? So for 45 years, I worried about money, and I've never had a money problem. So if you think about it, anything that I want in life, like I'll just get it. To like like I went on like a webinar the other day, and to be trained as a coach, and the guy was like, it's going to be $5,000. And I was like, okay, right. Okay. I'm going to find the money. I'll make it work. Right.
Yeah.
And then I found the money, and then I'm thinking, what am I worried about? Like, I'm really, honestly, if I just stop worrying about it, maybe it's not even if I stop worrying about it, it will come. Just stop worrying about it, but I can't.
Yeah.
And I think that for me, it's not a think, it comes from my childhood. So like, when it comes to money for you, You said when you grew up, you didn't have many problems and stuff, but what was the money conversation like when you were younger? And what was it like? I'm interested in your conversations around your parents and how they were around money, but also like when you were in a school and you're in the playground, how did money affect you? Like, because it affected me majorly when I was younger.
Yeah, that's interesting. You're drawing connections I've never drawn, but I think there's probably something there because um, in hindsight, I know we were relatively well off. Like both my parents had careers, and they were university educated, and we're working towards a pension. We had like 2 cars and 2 houses. Like this is the dream. Like I can sense now. Okay, you had easy street compared to the world, man. But I didn't understand that at the time, and in fact, I probably thought money was tight most of my upbringing because my parents were, I guess, very sensible. Like restaurant food is an example, right? And I've developed some bad habits around this because of this. We never went out to eat at restaurants, like never. We would get pizza maybe once a week on like a Friday night. We would get some pizza, but then other than that, it was always home cooked meals. So it was always like frustrating because all my friends, they'd like get to go out to like restaurants and like try new fast food places and stuff. I never got to try any, and that's the cuisine sort of in small town Alberta. So that was frustrating to me, and I thought it was because we were lacking money. When in reality, they were saving money. They just didn't see value in taking us to a restaurant. So, and there was the same thing. Like I had to pay for a golf program. It was $3,300 for 6 months. And this was like a winter golf program where I could hit unlimited balls and get like 20 lessons at the range during the winter when there's snow on the ground. So they made me pay for half of this and get a job in grade 9. So I was washing dishes in grade 9 and sometimes working until like 11 p.m. And sometimes on school nights, like saving money to pay for half of this golf program. And like, it still almost annoys me where I'm just like, that's ridiculous. like I want to be Tiger Woods and you guys are making me dishwash for like 30 hours a week for minimum wage. Like I should be hitting balls, So I think as a result, perhaps there's some drive there to like, I don't want to have to deal with that sacrifice. I want to put myself in a position to where if I want to do a golf program for $3,500, I'm just going to do it. And I'm not going to have to change the way that I want to live my life to accomplish it. So you've really drawn that line right there. I've just got to that with your phrasing, but I think there's something there for sure in terms of my relationship with money.
I think the difference today as an adult compared to like back then as a kid is I think the lesson is bang on, but you don't have the skills and the experience to find something that you love that you're going to get paid $3,500 for when you're a kid. Whereas now you can say to yourself, you kind of know more about like what you love and what you're into. So now you can spend those 30 odd hours enjoying it. Like, I don't know, maybe you could have got a job at the golf course caddying to get those 30,000 hours, right? But you're not thinking like that when you're a kid, So
yeah.
It's time to remind you that if it wasn't for the support of Run It Once Poker, you wouldn't be listening to Jaime Staples and myself chew the fat about poker, Twitch, and life. So it's time to give them a shout out. Rio Poker is an online poker room for players created by players. And if that appeals to you, then head to once.run/hero play today. And you can pick up a 100% welcome bonus up to a ceiling of €600. And there are 2 elements to this deposit bonus that get me a little tinkly. First, it never expires as long as you play one hand every 30 days. And second, all of your deposits during your first 30 days count towards a bonus. So remember that URL, once.run/hero play. One of the things I thought about when you talked about money, like my mum would give me money for school dinners. And this is because when she made us pack lunches, like we had the worst stuff. So it's like when you go to school and all the kids swap shit. Like nobody would take my shit, right? Like everyone would have like really nice sandwiches. I would have like fish paste sandwich. Like nobody would have them. So I was like, Mom, I want dinner money. And she'd give me £1 and I'd spend it on the like in like the slot machines on the way to work, and I'd beg someone to get me a pasty. Like, so like,
Right.
for me, money was about fitting in, about, I didn't like, if you didn't have money, you were going to get bullied, or you were going to get picked on because you couldn't do things that the in crowd could do. Did you ever get into any of those spots at all?
I didn't have a cell phone until grade 12. And I think that was a similar thing where, I said I wanted one, but I didn't really make it clear, like, I really want, like, please, like, I need one. So all of my peers had a cell phone like 3 years before I did. And it just came later for me. So I think that was an example where socially I was left out. But I usually just opted out of those situations anyways. Like I was on the golf course, so I wasn't really interested in the social circle of high school so much, because I was just so one track on, like, how can I get out of school so I can go to the course.
Was the love of golf, was the love of golf a way to avoid people, or was the love of golf just the love of golf and the consequences of it was you had to avoid people?
No, I liked and still like people. I consider myself a people person, and I enjoy hanging out with people and spending time with them and stuff. I think the reason I got into golf was really the same underlying reason I got into poker. It's because I felt a responsibility to become someone, whatever that meant. Whatever that meant to me at the time, whatever that means to me now, right? I need to do something with my life and become someone. And as an 11-year-old, my cousin was a professional golfer, playing on some of the mini tours. So that was the first association with, there you go. Like, you can do something special, something extraordinary. And then when I kind of realized I wasn't going to be Tiger Woods when I was 18, I spent 6 or 7 months just kind of partying and floating through life. I found poker, and poker was the same connection, which was like, I can get out of this small town in Alberta and I can become something by using my brain in my own house. Like, that's amazing. There isn't any structural difficulties in terms of I need $1 million to do this, or I need access to the best coach in the world. I can just work hard and, like, do something with my life. So I think that's the underlying reason as to why I played golf and why I pursue poker.
When you said that you played golf to become someone, did you and do you find yourself thinking that you're here to do something special?
I used to have that confidence. It's lessened with age to where I'm not sure if I'm here to do something special, but I know that a life worth living is trying. Whether I accomplish it or not, trying to do something special. Cliche of, well, you've got one shot. Like, that's it. You got 70 or 80 years and call it a day. So, like, why wouldn't you try and do something as an outlier or extraordinary, as opposed to doing something normal? And I sense that's not necessarily the right way of looking at things, but it's true to how I think about it.
Do you spend much time, like, future thinking, worrying that you're going to run out of time? And if so, what are the type of conversations that you have with yourself over that? Because you're still young, but I imagine you could still have those conversations, right?
Yeah, I'm 29. I don't worry so much about running out of time, but I sometimes worry about whether what I'm doing is like, is it the right thing? Am I on the right path? And is my impact that I'm trying to make big enough? You know, like this is a niche game, and the opportunities in the world are absolutely endless. So I'm spending all of my time in this niche game and trying to make an impact and make it a better place. And um, but like, should I play a bigger game than this? That's sort of the question that I grapple with sometimes.
It's really tough, isn't it? Because like we've got this K. Anders Ericsson stroke Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours to master a thing. You've grown up, admiring Tiger Woods. You know the sacrifice. You've already spoke about it that comes with like success. I remember Philip Howard Taylor, the darter. He's like, I had to sacrifice my relationship with my children in order for me to be the best dart player of all time. Right. So there's that, but then there's the other part of it, which is like, but I can do so much. Like I can interview Adam Plisker. I can write an article. I can play the piano. I can make money in all of those things and enjoy them as well. Or I could just sit back. I could read books and then write about my, my experience of them and book review them. Like, so there's the two like major polarizing opposites there, isn't it? That's what you're kind of talking about, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. And I'm on a path of trying to learn to be a little bit more selfish sometimes, because I realize that this this pursuit of like trying to do something special, and in this case it's in poker, is really like selfless in a way. Like it's in service to what other people's perceptions and other people down the road will think, as opposed to for me, right? And that's not great. So I'm trying to learn how to be a little bit more selfish and just do things purely for me, not for in service of legacy or in service of the greater good, just in service of myself. And I think it's been an argument that's helped to be more diverse in my interests and spend more time on things, because you're allowed to be selfish for 2 hours a day, do something that'll benefit just you. And I'm learning that. I'm getting there.
You're getting there. I like it.
Yeah.
When did your golf dream end, and how did that unfold?
I was 18, and I was like maybe a 1 handicap or so. So I was shooting like 73, 74, but I wasn't anywhere close to good enough to make it. I wasn't really making progress either. The perfectionist kind of hit a bit of a wall in that the ability to take it to the next level was really difficult, and I didn't see a way that I could get there. Like, even if I did everything within my power, it still may not be possible. So that was kind of a problem. And then I turned 18, and I could start like going out to nightclubs and hanging out with friends. And at the golf course, I made all these friends with the cart girls at the course. So I had just a great group of friends that I could go out and party with like every night. And I just started doing that. Like around 6 days a week, I would go out to the nightclubs. I'd probably drink 3 or 4 of those days. And then I'd work at the golf course at 6 a.m. And then I didn't really play very much golf anymore. So that was kind of the end. It was like this short middle period where I just, got drunk and like tried to not think about what I was going to do with my life, and just was in the moment, I guess.
So no floods of tears, oh my God, my dream is over. It was just more of a gradual realization that I still love this game, but I'm not going to be Tiger Woods.
Yeah, I didn't give it up until poker became a thing. So it was like I still was being naive and saying, "Oh, I can still do this," and then poker phased in and golf phased out until it was like I'm going to be Phil Ivey or Danny Negreanu, and golf is completely gone now. Like yeah.
Before you said, what did you say then? You said that you were just going out having a few drinks, and you weren't really worrying about, life, I guess. Like,
Mm.
this is like, my boy's 19 now, so for the past 2 to 3 years, I've been next to him while he's been going through this thing that I can't remember because I'm a lot older than him, of holy shit, like, I just want to have fun. I want to play video games. I want to watch Rick and Morty. I want to watch Finding Nemo and fucking cry over it. I just want to be a kid. I want to love Christmas still. Yet everybody wants me to get a job. I don't know what
Mm.
job to get. I obviously want the best job in the world with the most money in the world, but I don't want to work hard to get it. Like, I don't want to file or anything. Like, so I've been with him while he's going through all this, and he's luckily landed on his feet, right? But what was going through your mind in that age group where you could see the horizon of adulthood kind of looming and responsibility? I don't know if your parents were like mine, where they were like, if you don't get a job, I'm going to kick you out of the fucking house. But like,
Mm.
how was you thinking about this before you stopped thinking about this?
Yeah, I didn't give myself much room or much time because golf, I didn't have a plan for golf as to what I was going to do. I was just like this blind faith that I was going to make it. And then when I didn't, again, I still had it in the back of my mind. So it was all fine. Like, I'm a golfer, like, hey, everyone, I'm a golfer. It's fine. And so at some point when I started getting into poker, my parents said, okay, well, you're going to have to go to school to live here, or you're going to have to pay rent. So for the first year I paid rent, and like, I had a job, and this is when I was discovering poker, but I didn't really, I don't know. I didn't feel that pressure just because I guess I wasn't thinking about it. I was just so spaced out, like, that I wasn't thinking about what life would be like. I was just a golfer, and then I was a poker pro, and I knew where I wanted to be. I wanted to be Tiger Woods. I wanted to be the guys on TV, but there was no sort of conception of like the middle part of that, which is the reality of doing those things.
So were your parents like, think about this now, like, so your parents are socializing with other parents and friends, and they're like, hey, what's the weather like? Yeah, great. Well, how are the kids doing? How's Jamie doing? Like, he's got a job yet? Like, are your parents going, oh no, Jamie is a golfer, he's nailing it, like, he's going to be the next Tiger Woods, he's doing really well? Or are they like, well, we're trying to tell him to get a job, but he ain't fucking listening to us. He's fucking got his head set, he's going to be a golfer, he's never going to make it? Or are they like, oh, Jamie, he's in the clouds somewhere, thinks he's going to be a god? Like, what? Because when we're that age, well, maybe before then, maybe like 13, 14, 15, with they influence us a lot in terms of what we do, what we don't do in those things. So if they weren't your guiding lights, like, who were your guiding lights? Or was you literally just on your own thinking, yeah, fuck it, I'm going to be a golfer? And like, how do your parents fit into this?
Yeah, I think they were supportive of my golf the whole way through, but like, in adult conversations, I don't think they actually gave me a chance to do it. Like, there was always a lack of belief there from them as well. Of like, okay, this is really passionate about a sport, but like, he's not gonna be a pro. Like, he's just really passionate. Whereas I was like, I'm gonna be a pro. My cousin was always a role model to me in that he was a professional golfer. So like, that was kind of a path of like, oh, look, I know him. It's my family. And my golf coach as well. Like, because the metrics in which I defined my success and failure in life were based on the golf course. So like, they were kind of that's how you become the hero. And here's how I guide you through it, basically. And then as that ended, I think the conversations about me were a little bit less. They were just like, oh yeah, he's good. Yeah, he's good. He's just taking a gap year. Like, not a lot more discussion than that for a while.
How did it feel? How did it feel to know that their belief in you in this one area was lacking?
Yeah, well, I think it was frustrating, uh, and motivating. I mean, they were right in that if I was a betting man, I wouldn't have bet on it either, uh, and I wouldn't have talked about it like that in adult conversations. Like, oh yeah, he's the next Tiger Woods. Like, that's a bit ridiculous. I get it, right? But I think it was frustrating and fueled a level of like, I want to prove them and I want to prove the world wrong in some respect. Like that feeling exists in me.
I wonder how different it would have been if you was their only child. I mean, it must be so difficult for parents to look after 4 kids and give them all attention, and get down to their level and like, Mr. and Mrs. Staples, it must have been tough, man, Yeah. And when you have children, then you're like, oh shit, get on the phone, Mom. I've been slagging you off for the last 20 years. Well, I just want you to know that I get it now. All right. So you start 18. So you can drink alcohol. You can go to a bar and a club at 18 in Canada, right? It's not 21. Yeah. Okay. So in the UK, it's 18 as well. But we started hitting it hard at 14. So right. What age are you really hitting it when you were younger, drinking and stuff? Can you remember?
I mean, it was like maybe a couple months before I turned 18.
Oh, okay.
Like I kind of opted out of those social situations again because I was thinking about golf, and like in hindsight, I recognized I was ADHD kind of brain and like a little all over the place and a little loud. So I didn't always fit in perfectly in those situations. But I didn't put myself in spots to where I was like going to house parties or hanging out on the weekend and getting drunk. I think it was normal to start in grade 9 or grade 10, so 15. I didn't really start till I was 17.
When I grew up in a really provincial town, and those years of drinking really shaped our entire lives. Like the experiences we had, the risks we took, everything, it just really shaped who we are, for good or for bad. I know that's not the same everybody globally, but I know that Canada has a big drinking culture, so the United States does, and Australia and New Zealand. What was going on for you back then? The good sides and the bad sides of like being introduced to alcohol, drugs, cigarettes, blah blah blah, all the things that you shouldn't have before then. What was that life like around 18 onwards?
So it seems to me that drinking in Canada and North America is like very much binge culture, and definitely when you're young, it's like binge drinking is the thing. And I thought that's what drinking was until I came to Europe, and it was more like, oh, people just have this, and they just have one and that's it, right? So, yeah, I think it's a weird experience where I remember blacking out a few times when I was young and drinking way too much and, making a fool of myself and saying silly things or what have you. So that was a thing. I think cigarettes and tobacco, that was the one that really got me, because I started smoking flavored cigars when I was going out to like nightclubs. And the reason was a social reason. It was like, I am newly 18, but I'm a baby face. I look 15. I wish older me could have been like, Jamie, you're just not getting laid, bro. So don't put so much pressure on yourself. Like, you just don't have a shot. All these girls want to sleep with 23-year-olds. You look 15. Like, just have, But I didn't have that. There was always the chase. But it's hard as a 15-year-old to try or an 18-year-old looking 15 to try and make ends to these social situations, especially when I'm going out 6 nights a week. It's not like I got my crew of like 3 boys. We go to the club. Like, I'm rolling up solo sometimes and just hanging out with people, man. Like, it's all over the place. So I would go out and started smoking because it was like a social escape where I could have one-on-one conversations with people. Like I could light one up outside and get strike up a conversation with a girl, or I could make a new friend with a guy. It was like, get out of the noise, get one-on-one and make new friends out of this uncomfortable environment in a nightclub. And so that's really when I picked up that addiction. And it's one that I gave up a year ago. It's been just over a year.
Well done, buddy.
But yeah, has wreaked havoc on my life for, I guess, 9 or 10 years off and on. I've quit for about a year, 3 times in a row. This one is really a different mindset than the other ones were. But that's my greatest regret in life, is starting that.
What has been different this time compared to your other attempts?
There was just an absolutism in my mindset in regards to quitting, in that before I gave myself outs of, well, like maybe if I really get over this, I'll have a cigarette at a party, like I didn't have I wasn't closed. Whereas this time I was really angry, and I'm still angry, like today, a year later, that cigarettes and nicotine has caused so much frustration and harm in my life. It became a coping mechanism for me in a lot of areas. And so getting off of it opened up all sorts of like difficulties and pain. And I was just so tired of being a slave to this chemical that caused so much havoc. It's so stupid to start, that I'm just at a level where I'm a year and a month later still angry and so committed to like never having nicotine again. Never. Like, just that commitment was not there. It was like, this isn't healthy. I'm gonna stop this for a couple of years, and like, I'll have one time when I'm drunk. Like, It's not like that. There's an anger.
I don't think it was stupid. I think when we're younger, the desire, the overwhelming biological and psychological desire to fit in, to be accepted into any tribe, leads us to try so many things. And we live in an addictive society, so we're always going to be addicted to something. One of the biggest issues, like you touched upon there, is we fail to acknowledge how much value we associate with our addiction. So like when we're smoking, people can look and be like, what the fuck would you want to do that for? But we get insane value out of it. There are so many things that it does, whether it numbs certain feelings and thoughts that we don't know how to deal with, where it helps us to fit in. So it provides us with intense value. And we very often don't accept that. And we try to give up, and then we realize that there's this value. So we're like, maybe I could just have one when I'm at a party, or maybe I could just have one at, this and that, or at a funeral or whatever. And no, you keep being angry, bro. That anger will help you. I'm telling you, it will help you a great deal. What about love? So, having a kid, having 2 kids, suicide rates, is all-time high. And I often worry more than anything, not about my kid. I used to worry about my kid falling out of a tree, or getting run over by a car, or getting stolen by a pedophile. Now I worry more about him having his heart broken, because it's really something that you like. You can't just. My experience of it not very good. What was it like for you growing up? You said about going to nightclubs and stuff, and girls and that. What was it like? Have you ever had moments where you've had your heart broken? What about that kind of angle of your life?
Yeah, I was not a James Bond character, we could say. I really tried hard, and my success was not particularly great, but I had a lot of fun anyways. So no, I didn't and haven't fallen in love very many times in my life. And I don't know why that's the case, but I don't know. I guess I was just distracted to where I didn't really think about it. Sometimes today I think back to those times at 18 and 19, and I think about Oh yeah, that's what that dinner was like a date. But I thought we were just hanging out as friends. And like I just didn't clue in. I was clueless, man. So it really didn't enter my life until a couple of years ago when I met my fiance Rebecca. Was sort of the first time I've had definitely the first time I've had a relationship other than just like superficial conversations. And so yeah, that was quite a trip, but it didn't play a role in my younger life.
Yeah, it might not have played a role in your life. I'm the same. Like I didn't really have like girlfriends when I was younger, and I used to look at people. I've got this kid. His name's Ian Cinderby. I just have his image in my head all the time. He was beautiful looking. He had all the clobber, like the Ralph Lauren jumpers and the Nike shoes, and he just looked up. He got all the girls, and I had insane acne, like all over my face, all over my back. I couldn't go swimming. I couldn't take my top off if it was hot, and I would just be terrified of like just going up and even talking to girls, and I would put every single rejection to my acne and my spots. And it wasn't until I was older that I realized that most of them didn't give a shit about those type of things. But that pain and that angst of like, hang on, where's mine? Like everyone's like, like back then you would talk about everything you were doing. It's like, what the fuck? Nothing to fucking talk about. Like, so outside of not finding love, did you have difficulties like not being, our Patrick Antonius, the James Bond type, or was you just kind of like, whatever, like, it doesn't bother me?
Yeah, I think I was definitely self-conscious. So I was a little bit overweight, like chubby, I would say. So, and I historically and still at that point put way too much pressure on myself in terms of how I looked. The way that I thought I looked was like a lot worse than how I actually looked. And I've realized with age, like it didn't matter, man. Like you could just be yourself. But it definitely played a role to where I didn't have enough confidence in myself really um, to be successful and like lead successful relationships at the time. But so yeah, that played a role for sure.
It's really interesting, like as you go through life and there's areas where you have like super confidence and there's areas where you have like less confidence, and how they kind of like merge to just get us through life, and you look at you now on a Twitch stream, and you think, wow, this guy's like so got his shit together, he's so super confident. And it's like, imagine if he translated that to like girls, he would be like fucking Patrick Antonius. Like, you know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah,
it's really super interesting. So how did you get into poker then? How did you find poker?
So I was kind of transitioning out of golf, and then I think it was my brother was playing Zynga Poker on Facebook, and there was like a leaderboard with your friends where you could see how many chips you had. So I saw that he was playing, and I played, and he had more chips than me on this leaderboard, and I played a little bit. But like that spurred on a competition of like, I need to beat him. He's my younger brother. I need to have more chips than him. And so I started to investigate this world a little bit and like play more, and then tried to learn, and then I made my way over to real money sites and started playing like free rolls and for stuff like that, and started watching TV shows and seeing the guys in Vegas, and I was like, I want to be that. When I sort of realized like, oh, you can actually, like, this is a career, like people do this. I was like, well, I want to be one of those guys on TV. And that was kind of the switch. It all started with my brother Matt having more play chips than me. I think that like spurred the interest.
What is your television moment that you remember? Like mine was always the Royal Flush Girls coming on and tipping the money on the table. I would just pause it and just fucking stare at them. What was? And I was like, I just watched that show forever, and then
Right.
and I actually working for them was insane. But yeah, watch that show forever. What was your TV moment?
At the very beginning, it was Poker After Dark. That was the one. It had a lot of the old Full Tilt Poker crew on there, and then it would have some Daniel Negreanu and some Phil Hellmuth as well. And that was primarily the cast. I mean, just the Bellagio fountain in the back, the tall room of the Bellagio, the set, everything was, it was the cliche image of what it is to be a high roller in Vegas, you know. And to me, more important than the money that was on the table was being the high roller in Vegas, being someone, becoming someone. So that was like a perfect set for me, and probably why I didn't get into high stakes poker as much, because it was just like, oh, well, this is it's a little room. I don't know where this is. Oh, that's in front of the Bellagio on the Strip. You know, like that enticed me. So that was my show.
So you start playing poker. At what point? I mean, there's a time when I played in a $10 rebuy on Stars, and I bought the add-on. So like I was in for $20, and I won it. I won like 10 grand. And
I know the one, dude. A legendary tournament, that one.
I remember running downstairs and telling my dad, like, he was going to work. I just like, and long finish, he was going to work, smoking his cigarette. All right, Liam, what you been fucking doing upstairs on that fucking poker? I was like, yeah, I just won 10 grand. He didn't believe me. What were your moments like that before you became pro? Like, do you have any kind of like milestone moments that just helped kick you along that road and keep that kind of passion alive?
Yeah, man. I mean, it kind of has to, doesn't it? Like, if you don't have those, you don't hear very many stories of people that don't. For me, so I made 3 $100 deposits at the beginning, dusted the first 2 pretty quickly. And then on the third one, I got 5th place in the $3 rebuy. And this tournament, anyone that played back then, like 10 years ago, knows the 3 rebuy on PokerStars. It was like a huge guarantee. It was probably like 12 or 13,000 for the win in a $3 rebuy tournament every Sunday. So my parents are out of town at our family's cabin. So I'm home alone. I'm working on the golf course. I come back. I play this 3 rebuy, playing one table in my family's living room. Like, I'm down to 50. I'm just like, this is real. Like, this is my moment, right? I start smoking inside my family's home. None of them smoke, but I justify it by like, there's too much pressure. I need to start smoking. Like, I need to ease some of this. So I'm chain smoking in my parents' house, playing the 3 rebuy as an 18-year-old. Like, this is my shot. I get 5th place for $2,700. And that was it. I mean, I quit my job within the next month. I'm like, we're in. That's it. You know, this is my life now. So that was a huge, huge turning point. I wish I could say everything went uphill from there, but there's a lot of trials and tribulations after that.
Okay, so you decided to become a professional poker player after winning around $3 grand.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, I was 18. I didn't have much knowledge of the world or how it worked. I was just like, well, that's a bankroll.
Well, you had a roof over your head. You had no responsibilities, and your mom and dad were giving you food and water, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, that's a massive thing for all your people who follow you on Twitter. That's massive, right?
It's huge. Yeah. I mean, like, I recognize now, just like that support, even though it wasn't money, right? Like, I didn't have the money that I thought other people had that made them more successful as a kid. Like, just that support to have a fallback if I failed. I understand how few people have that, and like how beneficial that was for me to even take the shot in the first place. Like, I'm so lucky that they provided me a comfortable life like that, you know, like it led me to here. So
I took my shot at 35, and straight away I was like, I have to earn 45,000 this year through poker. Otherwise I can't do this. Like, I could only give myself one shot. I had to get insanely lucky or not. And let's just say I got lucky because I never made it. Otherwise my life would have been very different, I guess. If you want to be the best, then it's not a bad strategy to learn from the best. And this is where Run It Once Training has your back. Sign up today and you will receive 2 new training videos on a daily basis and 3 elite videos, including one from the Elon Musk of poker himself, Mr. Philippe Galfond. The link you're looking for here is once.run/hero learn. So in every movie, there is an inciting incident. So this is the moment where it's like, is the hero, Jamie Staples, going to make it and become a professional poker player, right? So is that tournament the inciting incident, or was there another moment that you think is the inciting incident in your hero's journey?
Yeah, that's that's the first moment, but like the trouble comes quickly after. So I have this bankroll. I owe my brother a bit of money for, he paid for one of my golf programs. Like he loaned me money, my younger brother. So I paid him back. And so, yeah, I didn't have a job, quit my job. Kind of got let go, quit kind of thing. And so I started playing, and it is really a kind of shameful existence. I realize now, because I would play on a laptop in my family's home, and like my siblings would be going to school, my parents would be going to work, and I'd like be playing one table of like $2 tournaments, with this naivete that here we are, we've done it. Like it's just 3 rebuys at like 3 in the morning, PLO8. I've never played it. So I run that 2K-ish bankroll after I paid my brother back down to $12. Because I didn't know what I was doing. I'd play deep cash games, whatever. And I remember crying in the basement. I was watching Schindler's List and playing 2 tables of cash games. And I was crying, and it was only half because of the movie. The other half was because I was down to $12.
You watch that movie, you're going to cry anyway, aren't you?
I know. Yeah, it was a 50-50 split. I mean, to me, in my world, I was just, everything I built myself up to be. I told all my friends I was a poker pro, my family. I hadn't done anything with my life for months. I was down to $12. Like I'd failed. I hadn't become someone. I was a loser. And it was just like rock bottom for an 18-year-old of like, wow, I'm not shit, man. But I had a credit card, and don't worry, I didn't deposit with it. I signed up to a training site for $29.99, and you get like a free week. So I signed up, and I started watching videos obsessively, like 3-4 hours a day of videos. And I played 20 cent, 40 cent mixed games, and built it up from that $12 up to like, 20 to 50 to 100, played some sit and goes to 300, banked a tournament. I was over $1,000. And that was the last sort of money that I ever deposited into poker. It was just, I went from there, and kind of that failure spurred me to take the craft and the game seriously and really learn how to play poker well, and learn from people that knew they were doing, and not put too much confidence in myself that like, oh, I can just do this. Like you need to go through the steps to make it happen.
So we could say like almost like the inciting incident was that training site in a way. Like, so you buy the program, like, okay, is he going to make it? What do you think you would have done if it hadn't worked out?
Would have gone to school probably. Would have gone to school, found something else I really loved, and just dove into that.
Yeah,
but it worked out okay.
What was the training site, and who were the most influential coaches back then?
It was Deuces Cracked. There wasn't very many. It was Deuces Cracked and Card Runners and maybe Blue Fire. That was kind of it back then, I think. Lego Poker maybe. And I participated a lot in the forums. You could probably find some of those old forum posts, and there's some embarrassing, embellished lies of trying to project who I am to the world in there. But it was really just the whole community, because there was maybe 10 or 15 regular coaches that engaged in these forums in conversation, and they kind of acted as a parental figure for me in the world of poker, like reining me in from my BS and like overconfidence, and giving me advice that I didn't really listen to, but got through to me when I heard it enough times. Like, hey, slow down. Like you don't really know what you're doing. And like, you should think about things this way. So it was the whole community. Joe Tall is a guy's name that stands out, but there were so many that I'll forget their names. That whole community was helpful.
So you joined Deuces Cracked, you start to put a bankroll together, and you build your confidence up. When does Twitch enter the story?
Well, 4.5 years later is when I started streaming. I've been playing poker for about 10 years. So when I was playing at home, I started going to school, so I didn't have to pay rent to my parents. And that was really my primary kind of thoughts in school. and played poker on the side. And I usually had somewhere between like a 5 and 15K bankroll. And I'd play online tournaments and I'd play live cash games at the casino. And that's kind of what I did for 4 years, not making any progress in my degree at all, just like taking random classes and just like, I don't know what's going on. And then I decide that I really want to give it a go. I have just like a moment where I'm like, okay, I'm tired of just floating. Like I want to do this for real and like really make it. So I dropped out of school. I was like, I'm going to go full time and treat this like a profession. And I saw a post on the 2+2 forums about a week later saying like, hey, Twitch poker is a thing. It was Rum Cake at the time. He was the head of the poker directory at that point. He said, we're opening up streaming of poker on Twitch. Like, if any of you want to try, just like send me a message and I'll help you get set up. And one of the goals I set when I dropped out of school is that if I want to play poker, I want to participate in the industry. It's really important that if I dedicate my whole life to this pursuit, that I don't just do it selfishly for how much dollar figure can I get, like trying to help the whole game. So this to me was that opportunity. I'm like, oh, wow, I can stream myself playing. I can share the game with brand new players. This time I was playing like $50, $30, $20 tournaments, what have you. Selling the bigger stuff. I might make a little bit of money. Some people might get to know me. It might be easier to get sponsored. Like, this seems amazing. Like, I can take this seriously. So I sent him a message and he's like, yeah, just get out there and get started. I was like, but I can't delay because I'm on a Mac, and there was no option on Mac computers at the time to put on a delay. He's like, okay, I'll partner you. So there you go. You can add a delay now. I'm like, cool. Didn't really know what Twitch was. And I started streaming.
What was the most natural thing that came to you when you first started streaming?
Well, I guess it felt a lot more comfortable to talk through my thought process than I thought it would. So that was something that I knew I could do well over someone that hadn't played poker for 5 years or like been spending all their time doing it, is that I could pretty competently get my thoughts across on poker hands. So that felt natural.
What about the flip side of that? What did you find most challenging at the outset?
So I did a thing where I shouted out every single person that followed me back then. And I read every single chat message, no matter what it said. Like I had an opinion that people were spending their time there and I needed to treat every single person's time as incredibly important. So if they said something to me, I needed to address it. So obviously with that came some like negative sentiments or some negative comments. And I would basically read it out loud as long as it wasn't racist. And then I would have to work my way out of this uncomfortable situation that I'd created by Anchorman reading out this comment to the chat, just like, hey, I think you're terrible, you fat, and you stink. And I'd have to sit there and be like, okay, so what am I going to say now to get this back to poker and like get this guy to leave me alone and not entice him, right? So working through those situations, because that's not how I would do it now if I started, but that's how I did it in the beginning.
That to me though sounds like, going back to what we were talking about at the beginning when we opened up about being who you are and then or tailoring to your audience. Like in that moment, how you started off, I see that as a beautiful opportunity for vulnerability, because it could be like, so a guy says, you're shit and you're fat and you stink, right? And then you're like, well, there are times that I am shit. I am a little bit overweight. And here are the reasons why I'm a little bit shit sometimes. And here are the reasons why I'm overweight. And then all of a sudden, this guy or this girl who's like punting it in there, into the chat, they're a bit, what do they do? Like, do they keep calling it? Like if someone ever says to me, like, you're fucking shit, I'm like, you know what? I am so shit. Like, you know,
Yeah.
where can they go? It's just being vulnerable. It's like David Burns, he wrote this book called Feeling Good, New Mood Therapy, about cognitive behavioral therapy. And he's saying, like, whenever you're in like a conflict situation with somebody or a conversation that could lead to conflict, always find 100%, always find a grain of truth from what the other person's saying.
Mm.
So if the other person says, holy shit, that interview you did with James Staples was shit. All you ever did was talk about yourself, Lee, all the time. Then you could go, oh, yeah, that's like a real big issue of mine. Like, I talk about myself a lot in interviews and other people. Thanks for pointing that out for me. Like, and that's not like being sarcastic. Like, that's being genuine. So well done for that. But that's a little bit more difficult when you've got thousands of followers, right?
But no, I think that ended up being a strength, what you're saying, because after I started, and I think when anyone starts streaming, you'll notice you have a surge of confidence, I think, because you realize that people will watch you and they're just okay with who you are. You know, like they don't have any commentary. The mass majority, like, just enjoy being there. And you don't have to do anything for them. You don't have to put on a mask or like entertain them. You just be yourself. So that came with a lot of confidence. And when those sort of comments came, it does open up that opportunity to be real and share like a self part of yourself that garners so much support from the people that actually do enjoy your time and your presence. Like you said, saying, you know, like that comment did not make me feel very good, but I'm just doing my best out here, man. You know, like I'm trying, and like, yeah, I do have a bit of difficulty in these situations, but you know, I'm trying my best. And like that creates a legion of people that love you being honest and open and vulnerable in that way. So I think on Twitch, you often see both sides. You see people extremely guarded because it's funny and people try and get to them and poke them. And then you see people that are extremely open and honest. And both of those work really well for different reasons.
Yeah, I don't watch a lot of Twitch, but I imagine the ones where the streamer is being vulnerable and you don't have to spew your entire, like I'm the type of person who just spews everything out, right? You don't have to be that guy or that girl to be vulnerable. But if you don't have that vulnerability and it's just about the technical aspect of your game, I can't imagine it's going to fly as much unless you are Phil Ivey, Tom Dwan, or Dan Onogranu. I mean, even Daniel's vulnerable.
Yeah.
You know, so I think is that right? It's like if you look at the top streamers, are they people who are vulnerable and talk about their life, or am I completely off base? Like, is the community very different?
Well, I don't think we've seen the biggest poker streamers be the most vulnerable, but I think what you're saying is correct in that if you don't have the vulnerability and your personality to build this relationship with, you're just basing it off the other things, well, you're going to have to rely on your poker skill or your analysis. And sometimes like the fortune of good runs to develop, you know, a large following. If you're not going to share that, you're competing in poker, and there's a lot of great poker players, but there's only one individual. So I think it's a lot easier to be yourself authentically and open with people and vulnerable with people, because you have a sure way to success there. There's only one of those.
Because if you think about it, like just extending what you're saying, poker in itself can be a lonely pursuit, right? Relationships are important in poker, especially if you want to get on and on, you want to get backed and all that kind of stuff. But Twitch, what you're talking about here is creating an audience. And if you break that down to the micro, you are building a relationship with each individual person who's watching you. And that needs trust and security. So trust that you're going to show up at the same time every week, trust that you're going to deliver. You know, what does that delivery look like? Trust that they feel secure, they can connect with you. So like, rather than just firing the Twitch, you know, in the chat, you're shit, like they're able to open up about their lives in the chat because you've just given them that gift of being vulnerable. Like, let's say you talk about cigarettes and you're giving someone a gift to say, holy shit, like I really struggle with cigarettes and I've never been able to talk about that before because I feel like I feel weak because I can't give up this addiction, you know? And then you get more and more people. So I can see how that interaction with your audience really plays out.
Yeah, man. I mean, there's a funny one that there's a guy that recently has been in my channel, and he ended up being a regular and a big supporter of my channel. And he came in the other day and he said, "Party poker stinks." Like, party poker is terrible, is what he said about a month ago. And so I responded to him and I said, "Hey, man, like, we're trying our best. I would love to hear why you don't think it's very good, because I want to learn from why you feel that way." And he became a regular in the channel, you know, like just giving that moment of being a human with someone else and like even giving them an answer as opposed to a form email is like, now we've got that connection, you know?
Jamie, like what you did to that kid, like you're the kid in the nightclub smoking a flavored cigars so you can get outside and have one-to-one conversations because you feel really uncomfortable in the nightclub, right? Because nobody's seeing you. And then this kid comes along, nobody's seeing him. And then you turn around and go, hey, I heard you just say that party poker is shit. Let me know why. You see him. And when people feel like someone's seen them, they're going to trust you. And you know, if that is the way that you operate, I can see how your tribe will grow. You know, seeing people is really important, really super important. I remember when I decided I was going to be a professional poker player, my goal was to earn 45,000 in a year playing poker. And then I changed my goal very quickly to through poker, because I didn't have the confidence that I would be able to make the money playing poker, and I didn't want to not hit my goal. So then I started thinking to myself, what are the other ways that I can make money through poker that is not playing? And that's how the writing came about. I'd never written anything since then. So as you're carving a career towards being a professional poker player, and I know there's this element of wanting to be something, wanting to be an Ivy or an Agranu, where does the business kind of fit in here? At what point did you start to think to yourself, or did you even think to yourself, oh, wow, if I make a success of this, then this money is going to be more reliable than poker money, and then I'm going to be set. Like, where does Dusty Schmidt's old book, Treat Your Poker as a Business, start to come into your life?
Yeah, I always felt like good at business sort of stuff and like an affinity towards money and how that all worked. So really is honestly like maybe 3 days after I started streaming. My third stream had 100 viewers, and I went to a home game with my friends that night and I said, I'm going to be a Stars Pro. And they're like, shut up, man. I'm like, no, dude, I'm going to be a Stars Pro. Like, I'm telling you right now. Like, within 3 days, I was like, this is my path to achieving what I want to achieve. And even from a monetary perspective, like from the first couple streams, I understood like, oh, this is really valuable to poker companies. Like having hundreds of people watch poker on their site, like these companies make a lot of money. And if you become the person that can get eyeballs on what it is that they're making, like this is a really big deal. So it was 2 or 3 streams. My brain projects all the time, too much. And I was like, okay, here's the path. Here's the way you can become, I'm not going to say the Ivy or Negranu, but that big figure in poker that makes an impact. You don't have to have a perfect turn frequency to do it. And yet you can still have the same impact. So like, here's your way, you know?
It's so interesting how you talked earlier on about the parents, and one of the tough things about their approach was like these high standards. And then you start playing poker and you're like, I'm going to be Tiger Woods. Not like, I don't even know golf, not some shitty golf. Like, I'm going to be Tiger Woods.
Yeah.
And then you get into streaming and you're not like, I'm going to be, I'm not going to slag off any online poker companies, but by saying I'm going to be PokerStars Pro, is saying I'm going to be Tiger Woods.
Yeah, that was the pinnacle of online accomplishment at
Yeah.
that point. I don't know if it still is, but this was Supernova Elite was still a thing. Like this was the highest level of achievement in online poker, was to be on that roster. And they really signed people often based on their skills on the table. But I didn't think that mattered. I thought they were going to sign me anyways. I was just like, I'm going to make it. So yeah, went for it.
A lot of poker players that I've known personally in my life, they have this unwavering belief that they're going to make it. If they lose their entire bankroll, whereas I would be slamming my head in a wall, they just look at me and go, "No, I'll just make it again." Like when they hit hard times in poker, I say, "Right, what are you going to do now then? Like, you can get a real job?" It's like, no, I'll be all right. I'll be all right. Like there's this unwavering belief, right? You seem to have the same kind of like belief. Like it's a foundational piece. Like I have the belief that I can beat Tiger Woods. I have the belief that I can be a Stars Pro, and then everything that comes from that. That foundational belief, where does that come from? Are we just saying that that's linked to this belief when you're younger that you want to be someone? Because that's different. Wanting to be someone is an aspiration. Saying I'm going to be a Stars Pro is a little bit more solidified than an aspiration. It's a declaration, right? Like I'm going to make it. Where does that come from?
I don't know. I guess since I was young, had confidence of who I am in my brain, and less confidence externally as to who I appear as to people. But I just assumed I could do it, I guess. That like if it's possible, I can work harder than anyone else and make it happen. And like it's unlikely that I'm going to be so much worse than someone that's naturally talented that I won't be able to work my way into the position, because I do think I work harder than most people. And I think I always have against my peers who I relate myself. So I just thought, well, it's possible. So then I can do it.
Was the timing right as well? Because like I have this friend, Onze, who works with me on the Triton tour, and a couple of weeks ago, I get a lot of shit, believe it or not, from those high stakes poker players, right?
What?
Yeah, and I get a lot of good stuff, but I get a lot of shit as well, right? So I stopped looking at the comments. And then some people started messaging me directly on Twitter, and you were one who sent me a message as well of love, and saying they're really good. So I contacted my mate Onze, like who I work with in Triton. I'm like, "Hey Onze, I think I might be quite good at this because people keep giving me some feedback. Like, is there any way that I can get some, if I can leverage this?" His feedback was just basically, "Oh right, yeah, you're not that good, mate. Like." It's just that everybody else is pretty shit and they don't care about what they do. And you do care about what you do. But Oprah, so drop your expectations a fucking mile and just carry on what you're doing. And one, I was like, wow, that's a good mate. And two, I was like, yeah, he's so true there. So when you were like getting into Twitch, you was like, I'm going to nail it. I'm going to be a Stars Pro. Was there an element of you had the potential of being a big fish in a little pond because everyone else was shit? And that you could therefore be better as compared to today, where I imagine the competition to be a streamer and to get those legions of fans is a little bit more challenging?
Yeah, I mean, the circumstance, the timing was just like perfect. It's like it was all a perfect storm. And I think back to all the things that could have gone slightly different that would have led me to something a completely different life. I dropped out a week before this new thing started. And by the way, I had 5 years of experience of literally only doing this thing every day. And this behemoth billion-dollar company wants to promote this one game on the platform. And we're going to sponsor you from the first day. Like, yeah, I got a little lucky there for a second, Like I didn't have kids. I didn't have responsibilities. It wasn't a relationship. I could literally grind like 50 hours a week and just talk to these people. So it was like everything aligned to be perfect. But also like once it was perfect, like I smashed it, I went hard. So I take pride in that too, because I recognized the opportunity and how I didn't create the opportunity, but once it was there, I seized it completely. So I'm pumped about that part.
Can you remember the day when, of course you can, but describe the day and the feelings and how PokerStars got hold of you and asked you to join them?
Yeah, I got a phone call. It was 45 minutes before my stream. I was lying in bed. I picked up the phone and the guy said hello, and I knew who it was because it was, I think it was PokerStars Brian or something like that, or Dave, and he used to go on the 2+2 PokerCast before his dad poker podcast, and he would do like the star segment. So he said hello, and I said, "Oh my god, hi." He hadn't announced himself yet, but like I kind of tipped my hand that like, oh shit, this is going down, you know?
Yeah.
And I was just freaking out, man. I didn't know what to do. You know, I was rambling like a million miles a minute on the phone. You know, like let's have some email correspondence and set it up. So, yeah, that was it, man. That was the moment. About 8:30 a.m.
Was it? I mean, we don't have to talk about money, but we can talk about it. With you wanting that, and then them coming ringing. Was it a part of it? Was it a part of it where you were just over eager and willing to accept everything, so you didn't tie up the loose ends of getting a fantastic deal for yourself, or was you with it and you were like, okay, it's here, but I'm not going to sign for them. I'm just going to get a really good deal. Like, where did you land on that one? Because I can imagine with myself, I'd like probably ejaculate everywhere and then just take anything they fucking give me, right? And then worry about it later. Where were you on that?
Yeah, no consideration of the dollar amount, like zero. Like they could have offered me $5 and I would have been like, great.
They were like, you have to pay us. You have to pay us.
Yeah. I would have paid them, honestly, because I recognized this was a foot in the door, and it was publicity and attention for my stream to grow it. So this is year one of hopefully a career of doing this, and now it's 5 years later, and so the value was getting my first professional relationship and getting that first exposure with a professional company and growing from there. So I didn't even think about the money. I didn't even really think about the contract. You know, I sent it to a lawyer, and then I just signed it because I got impatient. I was like, I just don't care. Like, I want to announce this now. So here we go. You know, I didn't care at that time.
Every moment in like a hero's journey is the refusal of the call, where I always use this example of Luke Skywalker, where Obi-Wan's like, come on, Luke, we're going to take on Darth. And Luke's like, fuck that. I'm a farmer. I'm not going to do that. And then he goes back, his family's dead. So he's like, okay, I'm up for it now. Was there a moment like that in your Twitch streaming career where you were like, okay, so your inciting incident is we've talked about that, but what about the refusal of the call? Have you ever thrown it in?
Where I said, just to clarify, something where I turned it down, or I had an opportunity.
Yeah. You thought, I'm not doing this anymore. This is not for me.
Well, perhaps it was the ending of that relationship and the starting of a new one. That came 4 years later. I was with them for 4 years and grew a lot and was incredibly grateful for everything they did for me. But for the first time, another opportunity had presented itself, and I had a decision to make in terms of what I wanted my career to look like. So I could have continued with the status quo, which in my mind was kind of the corporate paycheck and the safety, or I could have gone down a new path with party poker and tried to do something more important, I guess. It felt more important anyways, and really make an impact as an individual. But it could all go up in flames. And I could really regret it if it didn't work out to where I lost my spot at number one. So that was a real scary moment. But I decided to leave and pursue, which I thought was a more gratifying sort of career path at that point.
How did you feel when you were doing your job and you would look around and see Jason's numbers and Lexi's numbers? And did that ever affect you at all? How did you feel looking at other people's successes?
So I'm definitely competitive. I don't feel any ill will towards the individual. I view their stream sizes as the challenge, but I like them all as people, the people that are successful. But like, of course, I want to be that guy, and it's frustration with myself that I haven't been able to get that Jason Somerville or Lex Veldhouse or Tonka sort of numbers, who I would say would have been the three biggest poker streamers. So yeah, really like frustrated that I dedicated so much time and effort and I never made it to that top spot, or haven't yet. So I felt that, but not towards them. I have a lot of appreciation for all three of those guys, and think they're all great.
And who have been your mentors in life? So particularly around streaming, I guess, like who are the people who've really made a difference? You might not even had to meet them. They could have been in books or whatever, but who are the people who've been influential in your streaming career?
So I think some weird ones probably. I would say Kevin Smith is one, the director, because he used to have a podcast. Well, he still has a podcast, and I would listen to it before I streamed all the time. If anyone grinds before Twitch, it was just like podcast, like all day, just podcasts, right? And I'd listen to these podcasts, and he has a philosophy in life of you just give it a shot. Like, why not is basically his main philosophy. Like, why wouldn't you try? And that, I think, was really important to hear him talk about that for years, and then channel that into my stream and not get afraid or worried or not try because I had to be perfect, but to just, why wouldn't I try and create art? That's really his message and resonated with me. Second one would be Gary Vaynerchuk, who is marketing sort of guru. I didn't know anything about content at all. So watching him and understanding like, okay, you need to create this content and get it out to everywhere, because if someone's eyes are on Facebook, they're not going to come to Twitch to watch you. You got to go to Facebook to get to them. So like, work hard and scale and put this everywhere. That was important to learning how to grow my brand and what I do. And then the third would be Steve Jobs. My dad was a huge Apple nerd growing up. He loves Apple computers, always has. We would always get like new Macs, it was like he loves them, and I grew up loving them. And so his philosophy of like dent the universe, like do something incredible and extraordinary, like I tried to think about that, like do something extraordinary with this, like just do something wild. And growing up in Lethbridge, Alberta, streaming in the first place was denting the universe to me. Yeah. I don't view it the same way now, but it felt like that, of like, wow, you're doing something crazy, So those three were my biggest inspirations at that time to do what I was doing.
And what does the treasure look like for you now then? So every movie, the guy either gets the gold or the girl or the whatever it is. As you're doing your job now with Party Poker, what are the goals for you in the future? What do you want to achieve?
It's a really hard question. It's a very hard question, and I don't really know how to answer it. I can answer the business aspect, which is to take Party Poker to another level and work with Team Online to get what we're doing out there. But that's the business challenges. For me personally, I'm really struggling with that question at the moment. Because I guess I'm just discovering the faults in logic of some of the things that have got me to here, you know, the wanting to be someone. It's like, okay, I've kind of got to this level. Is that pursuit and that metric really what we want to continue doing here? Or do we want to start being more selfish with our time? Or do we want to play a bigger and a different game? And maybe I should be a better fiance, you know? So I don't really have the answer for myself, and I'm figuring it out at the moment. I'm 29. I know I love poker and I want to continue making an impact, but I don't have specifics. I have to find that out.
Well, Jamie, you have, like you say, a lot of time on your hands. You have that belief that you can put your skills and your aptitude towards anything. So I would say the future is bright and rosy no matter what you kind of choose. So thank you for being a guest on Hero's Journey. It's been a real pleasure talking to you.
Thanks so much, Lee. I appreciate it.